Flint's jaws clamped down on Cade's shirt collar. The 14-year-old boy screamed as 90 pounds of Belgian Malinois dragged him backward across the hardwood floor, his laptop crashing to the ground. Picture frames rattled on the walls. The overhead light swayed. "Flint, stop." Cade's voice cracked with panic. But the dog didn't stop. His teeth tore through fabric as he hauled the boy toward the front door with a strength that bordered on violent. Cade's fingers clawed at the doorframe, trying to anchor himself. But Flint was relentless, pulling, yanking, his growl vibrating through his chest like a warning siren. "Grandma!" Cade's shout pierced the house. Iris Brennan appeared in the hallway, her silver hair loose around her shoulders, her eyes wide. She'd been a field nurse for 20 years. She'd seen soldiers dragged from burning vehicles. She'd watched medics pull wounded men from collapsed buildings. She knew what desperation looked like. And right now, she saw in Flint's eyes. "Let him go, Flint," she started, but the words died in her throat. The dog released Cade's shirt and lunged at her instead. Not attacking, hurting. He slammed his body against her legs, nearly knocking her off balance, then grabbed her sleeve and pulled with everything he had. The coffee mug in her hand shattered on the floor. "What is wrong with you?" Cade shouted, scrambling to his feet. But Iris wasn't looking at Cade. She was looking at Flint's ears, pinned flat against his skull, at his tail, tucked tight beneath him, at the way his entire body trembled, not with fear, but with urgency. She'd adopted Flint 7 years ago through a veteran service dog program. He'd been a military working dog, trained to detect explosives in war zones. The kind of dog that saved lives because soldiers trusted him when nothing made sense. And right now, nothing made sense. "Cade." Her voice dropped to that ice-cold calm she'd used in field hospitals when seconds mattered. "Move. Now." "But now." Flint barked, a sharp, commanding sound that echoed through the house like a gunshot. Then he bolted the front door, scratching frantically at the wood, his claws leaving deep gouges in the paint. Iris grabbed Cade's arm and pulled him toward the door. Her hands, marked by years of caring for others, still trembling slightly from old memories, gripped her grandson with surprising strength. "Grandma, you're hurting me." She yanked the door open. Flint exploded onto the porch, but he didn't run into the yard. He stopped at the top of the steps and spun around, barking. Sharp, urgent, commanding. The evening air hit Iris's face and something felt wrong. Too still. The birds that usually chattered in the oak trees had gone silent. Even the wind had died, leaving the valley in an eerie, suffocating quiet. Flint ran down the porch steps, then back up, down, and up again. His message was clear. "Follow me. Now." "This is insane," Cade muttered, but his voice wavered. Iris stepped onto the porch. The wood beneath her feet felt different, like it was vibrating. So faint she couldn't be sure she was imagining it. But Flint wasn't imagining anything. The dog charged back into the house, past him, straight to the hallway closet where Iris kept her emergency kit, a red backpack filled with first aid supplies, water, flashlight. A habit from her nursing days that Cade had always teased her about. "Grandma, we're not in a war zone." Flint pawed at the closet door, barking so frantically that foam flecked his jowls. "Cade." Iris's voice cut through the chaos. "Grab the kit." "Why?" "What's?" "Grab it and get outside. Now." The authority in her voice, the same tone that had commanded medics under fire, left no room for argument. Cade yanked open the closet, grabbed the backpack, and stumbled back toward the door. Flint was already there, his entire body blocking the threshold. When they reached him, he turned and bolted into the yard, then circled back, herding them away from the house like sheep. 20 feet from the porch, Flint stopped. He sat, his gaze locked on the house. And he waited. Cade's chest heaved. "Grandma, what's happening?" Iris didn't answer, because she didn't know. But Flint did. The dog's ears swiveled forward. His nostrils flared. Every muscle in his body coiled tight, like a spring wound to its breaking point. And in the terrible silence of that October evening, with the sun sinking behind the hills and the world holding its breath, Iris Brennan understood one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever was coming, they had seconds left. Flint didn't give them time to process. The dogs had snapped toward the house next door, the small blue ranch where Mrs. Chin lived alone. Before Iris could react, Flint was already sprinting across the lawn, his barks shattering the evening quiet. Flint and oh! Cade shouted, but the dog ignored him completely. Flint launched himself at Mrs. Chen's front door, scratching and barking with such ferocity that the sound echoed down the entire street. Lights flickered on in neighboring homes. Curtains parted. "Oh, God!" Iris whispered. "Cade, come on." "What?" "Grandma, we can't just—" "Move!" They ran across the lawn as Mrs. Chen's porch light blazed to life. The elderly woman appeared in the doorway, her face twisted in confusion and fear. She was 78, frail, and used a walker to get around. "Iris? What on earth?" "Mrs. Chun, you need to come outside. Right now." Iris's voice was firm but not panicked. She'd learned long ago that panic was contagious. "Why? What's wrong with your dog?" Flint barked again, then grabbed the hem of Mrs. Chen's nightgown with his teeth and pulled. "Hey! Stop that!" Mrs. Chen swatted at him with her free hand, but Flint held firm. "Please," Iris said, reaching the porch steps. "I know this sounds crazy, but something's wrong. Flint knows. We need to get you outside. This is ridiculous. I'm calling animal control." "Mrs. Chun." Iris's voice dropped to that battlefield calm. "Trust me. Please." Something in Iris's eyes, the absolute certainty there, made Mrs. Chen hesitate. She'd known Iris for 15 years, had watched her care for dying neighbors with grace, had never seen her act irrationally. "Fine," Mrs. Chen muttered, "but if this is some kind of joke." Cade helped her down the steps while Flint released her nightgown and immediately bolted toward the Kowalski house across the street. "Oh no," Cade groaned. "Not them too." The Kowalskis were young, late 20s, with a 2-year-old daughter named Mira. Flint was already at their door, his barking reaching a fever pitch that made Cade's ears ring. The door flew open. Dex Kowalski stood there in sweatpants and a tank top, his face flushed with anger. "What the hell is going on?" "I'm so sorry." Iris called from across the street. "Please, just come outside for a minute. Your dog is insane. Do you know what time it is? You just woke up my daughter." As if on cue, a child's wail pierced the air from inside the house. Flint didn't care. He pushed past Dex's legs and disappeared into the house. "Hey!" Dex shouted, chasing after him. Iris and Cade ran across the street. By the time they reached the door, Flint had already found Myra's room. The little girl's cries mixed with Flint's insistent barking. Dex's wife, Sloane, appeared in the hallway holding their screaming daughter. "Get your dog out of my house." But Flint was circling them, herding them toward the front door with the same relentless determination he'd shown with Cade. "I'm calling the police," Dex snarled, reaching for his phone. "Wait." Sloane's voice cut through the chaos. She was staring at Flint, really looking at him, at the way his entire body shook, at the foam around his jowls, at his eyes, wild with something that wasn't aggression. "He's terrified," she whispered. "What?" Dex turned to her. "Look at him. He's not attacking. He's warning us." Flint barked once more, then grabbed Sloane's sleeve and pulled. "Okay," Sloane said suddenly. "Okay, we're coming." "Sloane, you can't be serious." "Dex, look at Mrs. Chin out there. Look at Iris. Something's wrong." Dex looked out the window. Mrs. Chin stood in the middle of the street in her nightgown, leaning on her walker. Iris stood beside her, that red emergency backpack on her shoulders. And now other neighbors were emerging from their homes, drawn by the commotion. The Reyes family from 2 doors down. Old Mr. Harding with his oxygen tank. The college kids who rented the corner house. All of them standing in the street, confused and embarrassed and increasingly uneasy. "This is insane," Dex muttered, but he followed his wife outside. Flint herded them all into the center of the street. A tight cluster of bewildered people in pajamas and slippers, some angry, some frightened, all demanding answers. "Iris, what is this?" Mr. Reyes asked. Some kind of drill? I don't know, Iris admitted, but Flint does. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. Cade stood beside his grandmother, his face burning with embarrassment. Half the neighborhood was staring at them like they'd lost their minds. His phone buzzed with texts from classmates who lived on the street. Dude, what's happening? Is your dog rabid? My mom is pissed. Grandma, Cade whispered. What if he's wrong? What if nothing happens? Iris didn't answer, because she was watching Flint. The dog had stopped hurting. He stood perfectly still in the center of the street, his body rigid, his gaze fixed on the ground beneath his paws. The barking had stopped. The frantic energy had drained away. And in its place was something far more terrifying, absolute stillness. Flint's ears pinned back, his tail tucked, his breathing slowed to shallow, controlled breaths. The street fell silent. No one spoke. Even Mira stopped crying, her tiny fists clutching her mother's shirt. That's when Iris felt it, a vibration. So subtle she thought at first it was her own pulse pounding in her ears. But no, it was coming from below, from deep beneath the asphalt and soil and bedrock. The hanging basket on Mrs. Chen's porch began to sway, just slightly, back and forth, back and forth. Do you feel that? Sloane whispered, her voice barely audible. Dex's face had gone pale. Yeah, I feel it. The vibration grew stronger. Water in a puddle near the curb began to ripple in concentric circles. Mr. Reyes took a step backward. Oh, God! Flint remained frozen, his body a statue of coiled tension. His eyes never left the ground. And then, in the terrible quiet of that October evening, with 17 neighbors standing in the middle of Maple Street in their pajamas, Iris Brennan understood exactly what her military working dog had been trying to tell them. They had seconds, maybe less. Everyone get down, Iris shouted. Cover your heads. Now! Some people dropped immediately, trusting the authority in her voice. Others hesitated, confused, still processing. And that's when the world began to tear itself apart. The ground didn't shake. It exploded. The asphalt beneath their feet buckled and heaved like a living thing. A sound, deep and primal, like the earth screaming, roared up from somewhere impossibly far below. Iris hit the pavement hard, her knees slamming into concrete. Around her, neighbors tumbled like dominoes. Mr. Harding's oxygen tank clattered across the street. Myra's screams pierced the air. The world became chaos. Street lamps swayed violently, their lights flickering and dying. Car alarms erupted in a cacophony of wailing sirens. Windows shattered in explosive bursts, raining glass on the lawns and driveways. And the Brennan house, the place where Cade had been sitting just 5 minutes ago, collapsed. The front porch where they stood buckled first, the support beams snapping like toothpicks. The roof caved inward with a thunderous crash, sending up a cloud of dust and debris that rolled across the yard like a wave. Grandma! Cade's scream was swallowed by the roar. Iris couldn't answer. She was on her hands and knees, trying to stay upright as the ground rolled beneath her in sickening waves. Her nursing instincts kicked in, assess, prioritize, act, but her body wouldn't obey. The shaking was too violent, too relentless. A crack split the asphalt down the center of Maple Street with a sound like a gunshot. Mrs. Chun fell. The elderly woman's walker skidded away as she hit the ground, her cry of pain barely audible over the earthquake's roar. She lay crumpled on her side, vulnerable and exposed. Flint moved. The Belgian Malinois launched himself across the bucking pavement and threw his body over Mrs. Chen's, shielding her head with his own. His legs braced against the ground, absorbing the violent shaking, keeping her from being thrown against a jagged crack that had opened just inches away. Flint! Iris shouted, but the dog didn't move. He stayed locked over Mrs. Chun, his body a living shield, even as chunks of brick from the Kowalski chimney rained down around them. 30 seconds. That's how long the main quake lasted. 30 seconds that felt like 30 years. When the shaking finally subsided to a tremor, Iris dragged herself to her feet. Her hands were scraped raw. Blood trickled from a cut on her forehead. But she was alive. They were all alive. Sound off, she shouted, her voice hoarse. "Everyone okay?" Groans and sobs answered her. Sloan clutched Mira, both of them crying but uninjured. Dex had a gash on his arm, but was standing. The Reyes family huddled together, shaken but whole. Mr. Harding was breathing hard, his face gray, but his oxygen tank had survived the fall. Cade stumbled toward his grandmother, his eyes wide with shock. "Grandma!" The house. "I know." They both turned to look. The Brennan house was destroyed. The entire front section had caved in, burying the living room, the exact spot where Cade had been sitting, under tons of rubble. The couch where Iris had her morning coffee was crushed beneath a fallen beam. The hallway where Flint had dragged him just minutes ago no longer existed. "We would have died," Cade whispered. "If we'd stayed inside, we would have died." The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. A hissing sound cut through the stunned silence. Iris's head snapped toward the Kowalski house. A sharp, chemical smell filled the air. "Gas line." Dex shouted. "Everyone back! Back!" The group scrambled away from the ruptured line, the hiss growing louder, more dangerous. One spark, just one, and the entire street could go up in flames. Flint finally released Mrs. Chun and moved Iris aside. The dog's body was covered in dust and small cuts, but his eyes were clear, focused. He nudged Iris's hand, then turned toward the end of the street, toward the open field beyond the neighborhood. "He's right," Iris said, her voice cutting through the panic. "We need to move. Away from the houses, away from the gas. Follow Flint." "You want us to follow your dog?" Mr. Reyes asked, incredulous. Iris turned to face him, her eyes blazing. "That dog just saved all of our lives. So yes, follow him." Flint was already moving, trotting toward the field with purpose. He stopped, looked back, barked once. "Come, now." The ground trembled again, a smaller aftershock, but enough to send fresh terror through the group. "Aftershocks," Iris said grimly. "There'll be more. We need open ground. No buildings, no power lines, no gas." One by one, the neighbors began to move. Cade helped Mrs. Chun to her feet, supporting her weight, while Dex retrieved her walker. Sloan carried Mira. Mr. Harding shuffled forward with his oxygen tank. And Flint led them all, 17 people in pajamas in shock, away from the destruction, toward the safety of open ground. Behind them, the hissing gas line grew louder, and the earth beneath their feet continued to tremble. Flint wouldn't let anyone go back. No sooner had the last of neighbors reached the field than Flint turned, head low, eyes fixed on anyone who dared step toward the street. When Dex tried to double back for his phone, Flint blocked his path, growling just enough to make his point. Sloan reached for Myra's favorite blanket on the curb. Flint nudged her gently but firmly away. "Let him be," Iris said, her voice soft but absolute. "He's right." The world behind them was chaos. Sirens, distant shouts, the hiss of ruptured gas lines, the groan of settling debris. But in the darkening field, a strange hush settled over the group. They were safe for now, ringed by tall grass and a wide, empty sky. Cade stood apart, arms wrapped tight around his chest. His jaw trembled. He stared at the ruined silhouette of his house, the place where he played video games, fought with his grandmother, lived his whole life. He dropped to his knees. It was too much. The sound, the dust, the fear, the knowledge that he'd almost died. That everyone here had almost died. And that Flint, just a dog, his dog, was the only reason they hadn't. Cade pressed his forehead to the grass and sobbed. It came in waves, raw and ugly, shaking his whole body. He felt a warm, rough tongue on his cheek. Flint, silent and steady, pressed his head against Cade's shoulder. Cade clung to him, fingers buried in his fur, and for a long moment it was just the two of them, breathing together in the dark. Iris moved among the group, her red emergency backpack already unzipped. She knelt beside Mrs. Chun, whose leg was bleeding from a nasty scrape. Iris's hands were sure as she cleaned the wound, wrapped it tight, checked for signs of shock. Mrs. Chun winced, but her eyes were grateful. "Thank you, Iris." I didn't understand before. I should have listened to you sooner." Iris squeezed her hand. You did listen. You're here. That's what matters. People whispered thanks as Iris checked on them. Sloan with a bruised shoulder, Mr. Harding's oxygen tank. Myra's scraped palms. Dex hovered, awkward and shaken, but every so often he'd glance at Flint with something like awe. The first emergency crews arrived as dusk fell, headlights sweeping the field. Paramedics leapt from trucks, asking questions, checking pulses, wrapping blankets around shivering shoulders. Firefighters pointed to the gas leak, guiding their engines away from the danger zone. A sheriff's deputy spoke with Iris, scribbling notes as she explained what happened. As he listened, his gaze drifted to Flint, who stood at Iris's side, alert, calm, watchful. "Your dog got everyone out?" the deputy asked. Iris nodded. "He knew before any of us. He made us leave." The deputy looked over the huddled group, then at the collapsed houses and shattered street. "You realize if you'd stayed in those homes, we'd be pulling bodies out right now." The words hung in the air, heavy and final. A hush fell. People turned one by one to look at Flint. Cade wiped his eyes, standing at last. He stepped forward, voice raw. "He saved us. All of us. I didn't believe him at first. I thought he was just being weird." He knelt, burying his face in Flint's fur again. "I'm sorry, buddy. I'm so sorry." Flint licked Cade's face and wagged his tail. A small, tired wag, but enough. Neighbors gathered in a loose circle. Some crying, some hugging, all of them shaken to the core. Even Dex, who'd cursed the dog not an hour ago, knelt and scratched Flint behind the ears. "Good boy," he said, voice thick. Good boy." The sky deepened indigo. Emergency lights flickered across the wreckage of their neighborhood. The field filled with the scent of crushed grass, antiseptic, and fear. Iris handed out water bottles and wrapped Mrs. Chan in a blanket. Mira fell asleep in Sloane's arms, thumb in her mouth. Mr. Harding dozed, oxygen mask hissing quietly. Grief lingered, loss of homes, of safety, of the world they'd known just hours before. But beneath it was gratitude so fierce it burned. For Iris's steady hands, for Cade's courage, and above all, for Flint's impossible instinct. As darkness settled, the group huddled together for warmth. Flint took a position at the edge of the field, eyes fixed on the ruined street, ears tuned to every distant sound. He would not let his family be caught off guard again. Night fell, and under Flint's watchful gaze, the survivors drifted into uneasy sleep, safe, for now, in the company of their four-legged hero. 3 days after the earthquake, Cade still wouldn't leave Flint's side. They'd been relocated to a Red Cross shelter, a converted high school gym with rows of cots, folding tables, and the constant hum of too many people in too small space. But Cade didn't care about the noise or the lack of privacy. He sat cross-legged on his cot, Flint's warm body pressed against his leg, and for the first time in 72 hours, he felt like he could breathe. Iris watched from across the aisle, a paper cup of bad coffee cooling in her hands. Her grandson hadn't slept more than a few hours since the quake. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the house collapsing, heard the roar of the earth tearing itself apart. But when Flint was near, the nightmares quieted. A man in a hard hat and reflective vest approached their cot, clipboard in hand. Structural engineer, his badge red. He'd been going door to door, or what was left of doors, assessing the damage. "Ms. Brennan?" he asked, his voice gentle. Iris stood. "That's me. I finished the assessment of your property. I'm sorry, but it's a total loss." The foundation cracked in 3 places. The main support beam snapped clean through. He paused, choosing his words carefully. If anyone had been inside when it hit, in the living room, the hallway, they wouldn't have survived. The collapse was immediate. Cade's head snapped up. His face went pale. The engineer noticed. "You were inside before it hit?" "We were," Iris said quietly, "until our dog got us out." The man looked at Flint, then back at Iris. He shook his head slowly, almost reverently. "Then that dog saved your lives." "No question." After he left, Cade buried his face in Flint's fur and didn't speak for a long time. By evening, the news crews had found them. A local reporter with perfect hair and a cameraman in tow approached the shelter, asking questions, looking for stories. Someone, probably Miss Reyes, had told him about the dog who warned an entire street. Iris agreed to an interview, but only if they kept it brief. She sat on a folding chair outside the gym, Flint at her feet, Cade hovering protectively nearby. "So your dog knew the earthquake was coming?" The reporter asked, microphone extended. "He knew something was wrong," Iris corrected. "He acted on instinct, military training, maybe, or something deeper. Whatever it was, he refused to let us stay inside. He herded us out, then went door to door getting the neighbors out too. And if he hadn't," Iris's jaw tightened, "we'd be dead. All of us." The footage aired that night. By morning, it had gone viral. Hero Dog saved 17 lives in California earthquake. Strangers sent messages, donations, offers of new homes. A veterans organization reached out, wanted to honor Flint. A dog food company offered a lifetime supply. Cade scrolled through the comments on his phone, tears streaming down his face. "That dog is an angel. Give him all the treats. All of them. We don't deserve dogs." He set the phone down and picked up a pen. The letter took him 2 hours to write. He crossed out lines, started over, crumpled pages, and threw them away. But finally, he had it. Words that felt true, words that mattered. "Dear Mom and Dad, I know you're deployed and probably won't get this for a while, but I need to tell you something. 3 days ago, there was an earthquake, a bad one. Our house is gone, but we're okay. Grandma's okay. I'm okay. And the only reason we're okay is because of Flint. I know you were worried when Grandma adopted him. I was too, honestly. He's intense. He doesn't play like normal dogs. He watches everything. Sometimes he makes me nervous. But, Dad, he's a hero. A real one. He knew the earthquake was coming before anyone else. He dragged us out of the house. He got the neighbors out. He protected Mrs. Chun when she fell. He wouldn't let anyone go back, even when we wanted to. The engineer said if we'd stayed inside, we would have died. The whole front of the house collapsed right where I was sitting. Flint saved my life. I don't know how he knew. Maybe it's his training. Maybe it's something else. But I'm never going to forget it. And I'm never going to let anyone say he's just a dog again. I miss you both so much. I wish you were here. But I'm glad Flint is. Love, Cade. P.S. When you get home, can we get him a steak? Like, the biggest steak ever? He deserves it." That night, after the shelter lights dimmed and the murmur of voices faded to whispers, Iris sat on the edge of Cade's cot. Flint lay between them, his breathing slow and steady. "You ever wonder why things happen the way they do?" Cade asked quietly. Iris smiled. "All the time. Like, why did you adopt Flint? Out of all the dogs you could have picked." Iris ran her fingers through Flint's fur, remembering the day she'd met him at the rescue. The way he'd looked at her, not with desperation, but with purpose, like he'd been waiting for her. "I think," she said slowly, "some bonds aren't chosen. They're meant to be. I was meant to find Flint, and he was meant to find us." Cade nodded, his throat tight. He slid down onto the cot, and Flint shifted, resting his head on Cade's lap. The dog's eyes drifted closed. His body finally relaxed. Cade's hand settled on Flint's head, fingers curling gently into his fur. "I love you, buddy," he whispered. Flint's tail thumped once against the thin cot mattress. It was a small sound, barely audible over the hum of the shelter. But to Cade, it was everything. Around them, the world continued its slow recovery. Emergency crews worked through the night. Families made phone calls, filled out paperwork, tried to piece together what came next. The earth still trembled occasionally, small aftershocks that sent people reaching for doorframes and each other. But here, in this moment, there was peace. Iris watched her grandson, the dog who'd saved them both, and something in her chest loosened. The fear, the loss, the weight of almost losing everything. It was still there. It would be there for a long time. But so would this. The unbreakable bond forged not through training or commands, but through survival, through trust earned in the most terrifying moments of their lives, through a dog who looked into the face of disaster and said, "Not my family, Not today. Cade's breathing slowed, matching Flint's rhythm. His hand never left the dog's head. And Flint, military working dog, rescue adoption, guardian angel, kept watch even in sleep, his body positioned between his family and the door, ready to protect them from whatever came next. Because that's what heroes do. They stay. If you love this story, hit like and share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe for more thrilling adventures and secrets revealed.